contest, between East and West, right? The Cold War. The Cold War ended in 1990 or something, and that changed the landscape and for human rights organizations. So Amnesty was always good because they were, in a sense, nonpartisan. They would criticize all governments, East and West. The communists and the capitalists and the third world countries, they would criticize them all, which I think is very powerful, and that they never took, in the beginning they were quite strict about not taking any government money, that it was all private donations. Evidently that has changed. They do take, they do receive money now from like the Ford Foundation and some government organizations.
But not governments directly.
Maybe not, so.
I mean, there's a big difference.
They're careful, I guess, but
Yeah.
it's not strict. And so I do see them get attacked from some groups. So the original secretary, Peter Berenson, he lost his job in 1966 or 1967 because he either quit or was fired by the board because he was suspected of taking money from the Labor government in England. And,
Well, was he set up as a sort of a director or CEO or something?
Yeah,
at
I mean,
that
he was the
time?
head. He was the secretary of, in 1966, 66. He was the first director of Amnesty International. So, and also one of his associates was suspected of getting funded from the CIA. So after the fact, so after the fact, it was, after the fact, it was confirmed that he did get some funding from the Labor Party. So, but he did quit. So the founder, the brains behind it,
Was corrupt.
he got dumped. Yeah, and it was probably.
Jimmy.
It was to fund the group, it wasn't for personal gain or anything, but it's, Amnesty is a large organization. Its budget is $300 million a year. They have 500 employees. It's a big organization, big and bureaucratic. And they have to hire high-level executives to run this big organization. They have to pay their executives decent salaries. So that is a controversial issue among some. The amount that the directors and stuff get paid, and they need to raise all this money, to keep everything going. And it has become. It's a middle-aged organization now. It's not a startup anymore. It's been around a long time. It's an old-time it's kind of like the NAACP or something like this. It's one of those old organizations that's been around, but it's still doing its job. And the thing that I like is that it's, it's still a membership organization. It's still a grassroots organization. But I don't know how well it attracts young people now. I mean, I think a lot of they've made a big effort to try to attract people from the underdeveloped world, so it's not just an organization for the Western world, The biggest chapters in the world are the US, the UK, and the Netherlands. And the Netherlands is quite large. The Netherlands, 1% of the population of the Netherlands are members of AI, which is shocking, isn't it? I mean, that's 1%. 1%. So in the United States, it's probably 0.001 or something,
Or less.
And they claim to have 7 million members. I don't know if that's real or not, but
Frank,
Well, let me ask you a question.
Okay, sure.
I've always had the feeling that there were 7 different amnesties and that they were administrated separately.
Uh-huh.
For example, we have a CEO here, and they make up stuff, but it could be independent of what kind has come. I'm talking about the prisoners of conscience and
Right.
some of the issues
Yeah.
that Amnesty International USA has stated. Those come just from the United States.
The prisoners
Things
of
that they're
conscience.
concentrating on, and they have to pay a certain amount of money to the central administration.
So all the
of Great Britain.
research isn't done in London now.
I think that an awful lot of the investigation is done,
Yeah.
but I've never been clear because we have country specialists just in Amnesty
Sure.
International USA.
Well, USA is the biggest group and it has the most money.
Yeah, but say that there's a human rights problem in the Philippines,
Right.
and that comes from a country specialist that's working with Amnesty International USA.
Okay.
And the question is, some of these other, the other 6 Amnesty International organizations, do they get that information from us?
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works.
That's what I'm not clear.
I mean, as I understand it, I mean, the big research places in London, you know, and they have like a lot, you know, like 300 employees in London that are doing this research.
But the country specialist, for example, one of the things I'm trying to find out is the name of all the country specialists in the United States.
Okay.
And we're going to get that because I've asked for it.
Okay, good.
But they're in the United States.
Right.
And they are the ones that I think are involved in researching the issues.
Well, yeah, I'm interested to know what you find out.
Well,
about that.
I don't know the answer to this,
Yeah.
but it looks to me like it's a separate organization,
Yeah.
Amnesty International USA.
Well, one thing I was interested in reading in the book by, the one book I read that by Hopgood, about the researchers in London. That's a high-stress job. I mean, you're face-to-face with these families and with the families of the disappeared. And Amnesty they spend a lot of money supporting these families, you know, sending them money, you know, paying for lawyers. And some of these, you know, and some of this research goes on for years, you know, like families have disappeared in Argentina. You know, it takes 10 years or 15 years to find out what happened to their parents, you know, that kind of thing. And I think it's a burnout job. There's some people who are able to, I mean, there was recent articles about 2 Amnesty workers that committed suicide. I mean, this is what it's about. You're doing this thing all day long, and if you're getting pressured by your boss or you don't have good mental health, this is very stressful. And you know, that was. I was also interested. My wife pointed out to me that J.K. Rowling was one of those researchers, you know, the children's author. She worked for Amnesty for 5 years or something. So that's part of her education.
So the Harry Potter books are about Amnesty International?
I don't know, but she, you know.
Well, she understood good and evil is really what it's from. Yeah. See, that's the thing. I mean, this stuff, I mean, when you're trying to advocate for someone and they're in prison, I mean, it's awful.
Yeah.
You know?
All right, let me ask the leadership, does it reflect kind of women and people of color?
Well,
is that no?
I think they've always been working on that, and I have a list of the, they've had some of their directors have been women, and here we go. Okay. Okay, Irene Khan was director for 10 years in the 2001 to 2010 from Bangladesh. And so 1980 was Sweden, 1986 was Britain, 1992 was Senegal, 2001 was Bangladesh, 2010 was India, 2018 the present director is from South Africa. So they've made an effort to try to reach, and you know there are chapters now in 100 countries or something, but most of them are very small. You know, even places like Russia have chapters. You know, Nigeria, I mean Bangladesh. They have chapters. You know, so, but it's largely financed by Western countries, and there is the criticism from a lot of third world countries that this is a westernized concept, you know, that the...
Is there a chapter in China?
Well, one thing I was reading, China is evidently one of the most difficult issues, China. I mean, so just in the last 2 years, there was the head of Amnesty in Turkey's in prison right now in Turkey, right?
Right, remember
Yeah,
that, yes.
so that happened 2 years ago.
That was a big
So, for spying or something, you know, so it's a dangerous job, you know, being...
But the president of the US Amnesty International, they got rid of him because he was interested in social issues. Do you remember who that was? There was something to do with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So do you have a breakdown on the American presidents?
Yeah, I think I did remember reading about that. But you know, Amnesty's been around a long time, so it's had these problems that some of these other groups haven't had because it's a mature organization. So I think that it's had to face things that other groups haven't faced. And you know, for instance, Human Rights Watch, it has all these professional researchers that they select certain countries to work on, you know, and so sometimes Amnesty International hasn't been able to move as quickly when something comes up, like Rwanda, say, you know, that to make a judgment or you have to have done the research, you know, and if you act too quickly and you have the wrong facts, then you can't stand behind your judgment. So the research is very important, and the research takes time. And
So that's where most of their resources go?
I believe so, yeah.
That makes sense,
Yeah.
It makes total sense.
And then in recent years, you know, the mandate of the organization has been broadening, and so that's like when Ron brings up health care as a right, human right. I mean, it's like, how far do you go with this, of course, you know? I mean, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights has 26 clauses, right? There's a lot of issues. And, you know, Amnesty began with this focus on prisoners of conscience. And they've had a lot of success at different times with that, you know, in releasing prisoners. And I don't know if they're having as much success with that now as they had in the beginning, you know. It might be harder now. It seems like it's harder now, doesn't it? Then I don't know. In the olden days, you were playing the East against the West, you know, and that's not the case now. It's a different environment. So.
Has there been criticism that Amnesty International has been reluctant to criticize the USA because it's inside of it, or is that part of the history, or people have kind of said that
Well, that has been an issue for, countries in the third world that, and that Amnesty sent a group to Ferguson. They did send a group. I don't know if it was from the United States or it was from outside the United States.
They were all from the United States.
They were all from the United States. So Amnesty used to have a rule that you couldn't investigate your own country, and I guess that's passed. Yeah, I read a section. They were talking about when the war was going on in Northern Ireland, the Troubles, which lasted 30 years, 1970 to 2000, right? And so the Amnesty group in London, of course, was not able to do much.
Because it was
I
the
mean,
same country, right?
yeah, well, they tried, I think. But I mean, there was a lot of violence, there was terrorism, there were prison strikes, there were assassinations. I mean, that went on for 30 years.
Yeah.
But
And,
Amnesty doesn't get involved in civil wars, really. That was
right,
a civil
yeah,
war.
that was a civil war. No, and they don't, and they don't take sides.
Well, that's the thing, Rwanda was a civil war, so was Biafra. I
Yeah,
mean, they didn't get involved in Biafra either.
right,
Yeah,
right.
right.
how is Palestine today considered? Is that
Well, and they've been there too, and I guess there was a big report. Actually, we should look at that sometime. Maybe we could do a session on that.
That's good.
They did a big report on Palestine like 20 years ago. I mean, there's been so many waves of invasions of Palestine. That. It's old news, I mean, it's been going on for so long,
American Friends Service Committee has a very strong presence
Yeah.
in Palestine and in Israel. They brought all their people together in December.
Yeah.
And they had they had an event with, and they also have field people working specifically on Palestine and Israel. They're in
Right.
Minnesota, California,
Right,
and here.
right.
And it's amazing. I mean, they
I-
really work hard for that. Yeah.
I just wanted to support that. I think they're 10 times better than Amnesty at the Israel-Palestine issue. American Friends Center.
Sure.
Well, I used to be involved with the school in Ramallah, for example.
Right, yeah, no, that's
It was
great.
trying to raise money. I met the people and so forth. I remember at one time. One thing that I would say right on this issue, is one of the bad things is that because Amnesty International USA is so dependent on getting money, they never said very much against Israel on human rights issues.
Yeah,
And that has just changed just in the last 3 or 4 years. But before that, they didn't get involved in it because, as you said, there's a mature bureaucracy that's dependent on fundraising.
right, sure.
And like in every other organization, the decisions that they make, human rights decisions, are influenced by fundraising.
They need to raise money, right,
Yeah.
they do. And
For a long time, you would never, for example, we haven't seen many letters about human rights issues, Palestinian, Israel against Palestinians, the bombing of these buildings, or human rights issues.
Well, can I
Do you
suggest
agree?
something? Because look, I've been following this issue for over a quarter of a century
Yeah, that's right.
myself. So
Do you agree with that?
we have done at least between 10 or 12 letters concerning specific Palestinian people, and which have been very difficult to research without, like, if I looked into this, I would have known about a couple of those people in West Bank that had been detained under administrative detention. It takes somebody doing the research over there who can speak Arabic and Hebrew well, and to find out about what happened to these people, because they typically disappear. They disappear into a military base, they disappear into a jail, and Amnesty's done a very good job of that, and they pick people who are significant to the Palestinians, not to me, to the Palestinians. So, you know, I can go back and I actually have a list of some of the people, like Khalida Gerard, who we wrote in support of, due to the papers, you know, that the Amnesty, the urgent action bulletin that Amnesty sent out about her. Now, she's known to a lot of Palestinians, but she's not known to many Americans, even though she's in the Palestinian parliament. So I think that AFSC, I have a different view of what AFSC is now. AFSC comes across the Jewish community as hostile, actually, to, you know. So and as far as me, I have a lot of experience with Quakers. I think that that Amnesty has a better perspective, more balanced perspective. Amnesty criticized the Gaza, the last, God knows, the bombardment of Gaza, okay, and because there were many Palestinian civilian casualties, over 1,000 people were killed. It's something that I objected to strenuously myself, Jewish people. And it was whitewashed here, okay, because the administration here wants to sell lots of weapons to Israel. So, among other things, and so there wasn't addressed that, you know, the artillery, there was indiscriminate shelling of Gaza, which is very densely populated, and it's certainly very objectionable. And I think Amnesty did bring it out, and the report that Amnesty produced was criticized by high-up people in the U.S. and Israeli government. But it was accurate. It was remarkably well done. Just to express a personal point of view, I think Amnesty's work in many instances in the Middle East is outstanding. It's not just good, it's something that nobody else covers, or almost nobody else covers. What's been going on in Syria is so staggering. It's, with all the people, more people have been killed in Syria in the last 10 years than all the Arab soldiers and civilians killed by Israel in all the wars. I mean, what Assad has done, he's bombed his own people, he's dropped barrel bombs out of helicopters on civilian neighborhoods. If you watch, were to watch, 60 Minutes has, has had several stories about the Arab the Arab people that helped, the Syrian people that helped the injured people and people who have been buried by, sorry?
The White House?
White House, thanks. So it's, Amnesty is in a position to criticize the actions of the Syrian government because it is objective. It's not allied with the United States government. It's not allied with the Russian government. In many instances, Amnesty has been the one source of information that you can get in the Middle East about what's going on, because Al Jazeera has had to pull back. Al Jazeera was outstanding. It's a newspaper TV service based in Qatar, and I really do believe Amnesty's mission that way. I say that personally. We're not, nobody is perfect, but they have done a really good job, and it's really hard to get information about some of the people that disappeared. And they will also criticize Jordan and criticize not just Syria, but Jordan and the so-called moderate governments. I was at looking at Urgent Action Network today, which is very valuable. It's great work about human rights violations in the United Arab Emirates and Dubai, and the abuse of migrant workers in the Arab countries, where they have no civil rights at all. They can just be kicked out. They get beaten up or put on the next plane out of the country. So, I feel very fairly defensive about it still. I think it does do a very good job of research.
You touched on the point that where you get your information from, and particularly news, can be very tricky. Venezuela now is an example of that, where Maduro is now the villain, and how people are sometimes. And that's again, Again, Americans have this kind of naivety, I think, this is me, about the freedom of the press and how great the press is. And when you look at it, I don't have this illusions about the press. I never have. But, and again, where you get your news and how it's slanted, Maduro, and again, and that's where the critical thinking and the research comes in. Say Venezuela, I mean, how people feel, there's a kind of hysteria and kind of, the information you get is whether this is a revolution or whether this is people in the opposition in Venezuela. Is it progressive or is it actually a plot by other forces? And sometimes it gets but I know it's hard to get. Like I said, Al Jazeera was really great. There are other news sources, but getting them and listening to them is just so difficult. And that's what makes a lot of these things so some of it's so complicated. But
Wow.
Okay, well, that's all I really have at the moment, so.
So on balance, you'd give Amnesty
I'll give
A
it
plus?
an A.
An A. Okay. All right,
3.5
fantastic.
out of 4 stars.
Does the industry-
We all choose to be here, right?
Absolutely.
So, we're,
Absolutely.
spread the gospel, right?
Well, it's interesting, the Nobel Prize effect. I mean, AFSC got a Nobel Prize too.
That's right.
Right.
And they get money. They have half as much as Amnesty. But that's a lot of the reason, is everyone knows it.
You know what I was shocked to hear? The troubles that Southern Poverty Law Centers had recently, with their director, the D's. And the news came out that they have $500 million in bank account. I mean, they are fabulous fundraisers. And I mean, was that a secret or, I don't know.
Well, good for them. They bankrupted the KKK, but they've come back.
Well, I think they won court judgments and all
Yeah.
that. I mean, so some of that's from that, but still,
Yeah.
they're
Wow.
well funded,
All right.
Can I clean the floors over there? In Enchanter?
I mean, they have a modest little office building in Birmingham, and, it's, or is it in Birmingham or in Montgomery, I guess.
Well, they're very effective. I remember when I first came here, they sent me a picture of someone who'd been lynched. And it's like, okay, I'll give you money.
Oh,
Don't
I
ever
mentioned
send me a
her,
picture
yeah.
like this
I
again.
mentioned her, yeah. Oh, yeah, your wife.
I mean, it was like,
Yeah.
this is happening?
I'll call her, I'll call
Yeah.
her.
She's in California right now.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'll send her an email. Yeah, I mean, it's, if she wants to do a session on the